The Shalimar 7 system was dying. A collapsed star, on the brink of becoming a black hole, had ignited an infernal dance of gravity and radiation. Ships that strayed too close were torn apart, reduced to debris and twisted metal. The remains of the system's once thriving worlds were nothing more than scorched moons and unstable asteroid fields. In the heart of this cosmic chaos, Lieutenant Marcus Holt of the Earth Interstellar Defense Force gritted his teeth, trying to keep his shuttle steady. The view outside the cockpit was a blend of starlight and swirling plasma, the remnants of the dying star flickering like a broken beacon. A cold sweat trickled down Marcus's neck as his hand tightened around the controls. He glanced at his co-pilot, Sergeant Juno Rivera, who was staring at her console with laser focus. "You know, Juno, I was hoping for a vacation after this," Marcus muttered, his voice dry. "A nice beach, a cold drink, maybe a hammock, no collapsing stars." Juno shot him a quick glance, the corner of her mouth twitching. "You volunteered for this mission. You knew what you were getting into." Marcus leaned back in his seat, giving her a look. "Yes, but the whole saving of princesses thing seemed much more glamorous when I read about it in the recruitment pamphlet." The mission was simple enough, at least in theory. A high-profile alien diplomat, Zilara, daughter of Queen Talara of the Ekris Dominion, had been captured by a rival faction. The Ekris were an ancient species, known for their striking beauty and long pointed ears. They were humanoid in form, but their eyes, glowing like distant stars, held an otherworldly intelligence. The Queen had sent out a distress signal, desperate to get her daughter back, and Earth had responded. Not with diplomacy, but with soldiers. Marcus had been picked for the job. He was no hero, just a soldier who'd followed orders his whole life. But now, as his shuttle plunged deeper into the system, he began to wonder what exactly he had signed up for. "Commander Holt," a voice crackled over the comms. "This is ground command. We're receiving enemy signals. It seems like a full-scale operation's underway. You're going to have company." "I figured," Marcus replied dryly. "You know, I didn't think this mission would come with a free light show and a few hundred hostiles, but hey, here we are." Juno let out a snort, but Marcus didn't miss the tension in her shoulders. They had been through tough situations before, but nothing quite like this. The Ekris were skilled diplomats and warriors, and their enemies were just as ruthless. The mission to extract Zilara wasn't just about a simple rescue anymore. It was a powder keg that had the potential to ignite a full-scale war. As the shuttle neared the orbital station, Marcus's radar flared. Hostile ships, dozens of them, emerged from the shadows of the collapsing star, closing in fast. "Well, that's not good," Marcus muttered, jerking the shuttle into evasive maneuvers. The enemy ships, sleek, angular, and deadly, were more maneuverable than his craft. They didn't hesitate, unleashing a barrage of plasma that shook the shuttle. The shields flickered but held. "Looks like we're doing this the hard way," Juno said, flicking switches on her console. "I'll try to shake them off. You focus on the mission." "Right," Marcus grunted. He'd never been one to back down from a fight, but the odds were starting to feel more and more like a suicide mission. Still, he had a job to do. They broke through the atmosphere of the station, debris swirling like a twisted carnival of destruction. It was a crumbling relic, half destroyed by previous battles, but it was their only shot at reaching Zilara. As they touched down on a makeshift landing pad, Marcus was already running through his checklist, instincts taking over. "Juno, get the weapons," he barked. "I'll grab the tech." The hatch opened with a hiss, and the pair of them rushed into the darkened corridors of the station, where the hum of emergency lights cast eerie shadows. Every footstep echoed like a distant drumbeat, signaling that time was running out. "Stay sharp," Marcus said as they moved through the maze of hallways. He could hear the faint sound of blaster fire in the distance, the shrieks of wounded soldiers echoing off the walls. The Ekris soldiers, heavily armored and lethal, were entrenched in a fierce firefight, but Marcus's focus was elsewhere. They were getting closer to their target. "Hold up," Juno whispered, stopping in front of a locked door. She pulled out a small device from her belt and attached it to the door's security panel. "This'll take a minute. It's got a decent encryption." Marcus glanced over his shoulder, scanning the corridor. "You know, if we survive this, I'm going to buy you a drink. Hell, I'll even make it a double." Juno raised an eyebrow. "I'll believe it when I see it, Lieutenant." With a soft click, the door slid open, and the two of them stepped into the chamber. There, shackled and sitting in the middle of a cold, metallic room, was Zilara. She looked up at them with a calm, almost serene expression. Despite the chaos, despite the danger, there was an air of regal composure about her. "Ah, the human hero arrives," she said, her voice melodic but laced with an unmistakable edge of sarcasm. "Took you long enough?" Marcus blinked, surprised by her tone. She wasn't begging for help. She wasn't panicking. No, this woman, this alien princess, was as calm as if she were waiting for her afternoon tea. "Nice to meet you too," Marcus said, stepping forward. "You, doing okay?" Zilara gave him a look, as if he were the one who should be asking that. "I'm alive, aren't I?" "Fair point," Marcus muttered, walking over to unshackle her. "All right, princess, time to get out of here." She stood up slowly, her movements graceful despite the chains. "Do you even know what you're doing?" she asked, her eyes narrowing. "Not really," Marcus admitted, half grinning, "but I do know this. You're getting out of here, and then I'm flying us out of this mess." She studied him for a long moment. "I don't think you fully understand what this rescue means, human." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "I thought I was just saving a princess. Simple stuff." "Huh," she said with a slight laugh. "If only it were that simple." Before Marcus could respond, the room shook with a violent explosion. The station was collapsing around them. It was time to go. Marcus grabbed her arm, pulling her toward the door. "Maybe we'll figure out the details on the way out," he said, a grin playing at the edges of his lips. "You'll get used to the chaos." As they sprinted down the corridors, the sound of blaster fire ringing in their ears, Marcus couldn't help but think. This was just the beginning. The sound of heavy footsteps echoed through the narrow hallways of the Imperial Palace. The walls lined with alien symbols and intricate, glowing patterns that pulsed like the heartbeat of the Empire. Marcus Holt, his boots clicking against the polished floor, was doing his best to look confident. He was trying to convince himself that walking into the heart of an alien empire, after rescuing their princess, was just another day on the job. Zilara, her arms crossed and her long, silvery hair cascading over her shoulders, walked beside him with an air of dignity that was hard to ignore. The royal guards at every corner looked at him with a mixture of suspicion and curiosity, their sharp eyes never leaving his back. "This is where I'm supposed to feel important, right?" Marcus asked, glancing sideways at Zilara. She shot him a sidelong glance. "If you're waiting for a medal, don't. The Ekris have no use for human heroics." "Well then, what am I doing here?" Marcus said, half laughing as he adjusted his uniform. The collar felt too tight all of a sudden. "I didn't sign up for an intergalactic press tour." "You saved my life," Zilara said coolly, "and now you're about to learn the consequences of such a gesture." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "What, like becoming a galactic war hero? Being paraded through the streets like some kind of trophy?" "If only it were that simple," Zilara said, her tone a mix of amusement and warning. "The galaxy doesn't kneel for human soldiers. You'll see." They reached the large, ornate door leading into the Queen's chamber. A pair of Ekris guards stood motionless, their eyes locked onto Marcus with an unsettling intensity. Zilara stepped forward and nodded at them, and without a word the door slid open, revealing a grand room bathed in golden light. It was a room that looked like it belonged in the halls of power. Decades of history woven into its stone walls, banners hanging high, symbols of the Ekris dominion emblazoned everywhere. Sitting on a throne made of crystalline material was Queen Talara herself. She was everything Marcus had imagined. Tall, regal, with skin as white as the moon, and long, graceful ears that were an unmistakable marker of her species. Her eyes, a piercing shade of violet, were filled with both wisdom and a dangerous edge, as if she could see right through him. Marcus had been in front of commanding officers before, but this was different. He wasn't just facing a ruler. He was facing someone who, with a word, could shift the balance of power in the galaxy. "Well, well," Queen Talara said, her voice smooth but sharp, like the cut of a blade. "The human soldier who saved my daughter. I had hoped we could meet under better circumstances." Marcus bowed his head slightly. He wasn't one for ceremonial gestures, but something about her presence made him feel small, like a speck of dust caught in a gust of wind. "Your Majesty," he said, keeping his voice steady, "I'm just a soldier doing my job." Zilara gave a small, almost imperceptible smirk. "My mother believes in modesty, you see." Marcus glanced at Zilara, unsure of whether she was mocking him or not. "It's not modesty," he said. "It's survival instinct. You know, in case I have to fight my way out of here." "Ah," Queen Talara said, leaning forward, her eyes narrowing in amusement. You think your rescue was a simple matter of survival, human? That you were in the right place at the right time? Isn't that how these things usually work? Marcus asked with a half grin. I mean, you send out a distress signal, a soldier answers it, and bam, we have a happy ending. At least that's how it was supposed to go. Queen Talara studied him for a long moment. No, you are wrong, Lieutenant Holt. You have just begun a ripple that will spread across the galaxy, and it will change the course of everything. Marcus blinked. Wait, what? I didn't sign up for any of that. I'm just here for the extraction. Well, Talara said slowly, now you are part of something far larger than you understand. You have become a symbol, and the universe doesn't take kindly to symbols. You're telling me I'm a walking political nightmare now? Marcus asked, half laughing, half exasperated. Great. Fantastic. Zilara, who had been silent for a moment, spoke up. Not a nightmare, Holt. A necessary chaos. A power shift. We, my mother, the Ekris, have been on the brink of a civil war for decades. Your actions may have just changed the tide. Marcus stared at her, trying to digest what she was saying. This wasn't just about saving her life. It was about sparking something. Something massive. So, what now? Zilara glanced over at her mother, who sat in silence, the weight of the moment pressing down on all of them. Finally, Queen Talara spoke. Now, Lieutenant Holt, you will stand beside us. You will be the human who made the impossible happen. You will be the rallying point for those who wish to see a united Ekris Dominion. Marcus wasn't sure if he was ready for that. I'm not really the speech-making, crowd-rousing type. I'm more of a get in, get out, save the day kind of guy. That's exactly why you're here, Talara said with a small smile. The universe needs people who can act without hesitation. People like you. Marcus couldn't help but laugh. Well, Your Highness, I can act, but I don't think I'm about to start a revolution or anything. I just wanted to make sure the princess got out alive. Zilara's eyes softened for a moment, her usual icy demeanor fading. I never asked for a revolution, but sometimes the galaxy forces you to play a part you didn't choose. Fantastic, Marcus said, rubbing the back of his neck. I was hoping for a vacation after this. Zilara smirked. And now you're an ambassador of chaos. The galaxy is your vacation destination. Marcus groaned. I should have stayed in the infantry. Queen Talara watched them both with a mixture of amusement and something else. Something unreadable. The galaxy doesn't always give you what you want, Lieutenant Holt. Sometimes it gives you what you need. And right now, you need to learn the ways of diplomacy, for better or for worse. Just then, a loud clang sounded from outside the throne room doors. A series of shouts echoed, followed by a distinct metallic sound. A guard rushed into the room, breathing heavily. Your Majesty, he gasped, we have intruders. Talara's face hardened, the playfulness in her voice vanishing. This is not the time for distractions. What intruders? The outcasts, the guard said, his voice trembling. They've breached the outer defenses. They're here. Marcus raised an eyebrow. Outcasts? You mean the guys who want to take over your kingdom? Yes, Zilara said, stepping forward. And this time, they have a new ally. Well, that's just great, Marcus muttered. It's like the universe just keeps piling it on. Queen Talara stood, her regal composure returning. Prepare for battle, then. I will not let my empire fall to rebels. Or anyone else. Marcus looked at Zilara, who gave him a small, knowing grin. Looks like your vacation just got postponed again. Fantastic, Marcus said, cracking his knuckles. Let's hope they brought snacks. The palace trembled with the force of the outcast's assault. Outside, the clash of metal against metal rang through the halls like a death knell, as the enemy forces breached the outer defenses with relentless precision. Inside, the tension was palpable. Marcus Holt, standing in the middle of the regal throne room, had to admit he hadn't expected this much excitement when he signed up for the job. Zilara, ever calm, stepped forward. We'll need to fight our way out of here, Holt. No way around it. Marcus gave her a deadpan look. I was hoping for a diplomatic resolution. You know, a little tea, some nice conversation. But no, we're fighting. Again. Zilara's lips twitched into a smile. That's the problem with being a soldier. You can't ever escape the fighting. But don't worry, she added, glancing at him. I'll make sure you don't get too bored. You sure you're not secretly a soldier yourself? Marcus shot back, checking his weapon for the umpteenth time. He was a soldier through and through, but this felt different. The stakes were higher, the political game more dangerous. And yet, here he was, caught between an alien princess and her war-torn empire, with nothing but his trusty blaster and a fair amount of bad luck. Soldiers are useful, Zilara said with a shrug, but diplomacy can be just as deadly. Don't believe me? She motioned to her mother, Queen Talara, who had already summoned her guards, preparing to defend the throne room at all costs. Talara's violet eyes narrowed as the door to the chamber slammed open. The outcasts had arrived. Looks like our invitation has been accepted, Marcus muttered, stepping into position next to Zilara. Any chance of rescheduling this meeting? I'm afraid not, Zilara said, her voice taking on a tone of command. Get ready, Holt. Marcus steadied himself. The door's explosion had left behind a cloud of smoke, through which emerged the outcasts, humanoid figures cloaked in dark, jagged armor. Their leader, a towering figure with a mechanical arm and a jagged scar running across his face, strode forward confidently. Queen Talara. The man's voice was cold and guttural, as though it had been scraped across gravel. You've been living in luxury while your empire crumbles. We, the outcasts, will put an end to your reign. Your daughter will be the first to fall. Marcus didn't need any further invitation. He raised his blaster and fired, hitting one of the outcasts square in the chest. The figure staggered back, but to Marcus's surprise, the armor absorbed the shot, only leaving a minor scorch mark. The outcasts were well equipped. You've got to be kidding me, Marcus muttered under his breath. He darted behind a pillar, ducking a retaliatory shot that passed inches from his head. Zilara, without missing a beat, raised her own weapon and returned fire with deadly accuracy, her blasts streaking through the air. Stay focused, soldier, Zilara shouted over the chaos. We need to take down their leader. Marcus nodded, scanning the room. The outcasts had already begun their attack in full force, spreading across the room in a web of movements that were swift, precise, and terrifyingly coordinated. Queen Talara was surrounded by her guards, who fought back fiercely, but even they were beginning to show signs of fatigue. I'm going to take a wild guess, Marcus said, peeking from behind the pillar. But I'm assuming that's their leader. Zilara glanced over. The man with the scar and the mechanical arm was advancing, directing his troops with a cruel efficiency. That's him. His name is Varric, the outcast leader. Well, this is going to be fun, Marcus muttered. I'll handle the guy with the big arm. I've got it, Zilara interrupted, already stepping out from cover with the agility of a trained fighter. You keep their flanks occupied. Marcus hesitated for a moment. You sure about this? You know, the last time I checked, I was the one with the guns. Zilara shot him a look. And the last time I checked, you weren't born to this chaos. Stay out of my way. Marcus, now realizing it was no use arguing, nodded. All right, princess, but don't get yourself killed. I'll be around. With a swift motion, Zilara disappeared into the fray, her long ears catching the flickering light as she moved with calculated precision. Marcus, taking a deep breath, rushed forward to engage the rest of the outcasts. The battle was chaotic, but he couldn't deny that there was a certain rhythm to it. The way the world seemed to slow down in moments of extreme focus, every movement deliberate and calculated. He dodged a blast aimed at him, returning fire with practiced ease. The outcasts were tough, but he wasn't going down without a fight. He spotted Varric again, a hulking figure commanding his forces with brutal authority. Without wasting another second, Marcus sprinted toward him, weaving through the gunfire. Varric turned just in time to meet his charge, and with a growl swung his mechanical arm in a wide arc. Marcus barely avoided the strike, rolling to the side and coming up on his feet. You think you can stop me, human? Varric snarled, his eyes burning with hatred. Marcus grinned despite the situation. Oh, I think I can do more than that. Let's see how well that shiny new arm of yours holds up. Varric growled again and advanced, but Marcus was faster. He ducked, narrowly avoiding another strike, and launched himself at Varric's side, aiming for the mechanical arm. He fired point blank, sending an electric charge into the vulnerable joints of the arm's circuitry. Varric screamed in pain, his mechanical arm locking up as sparks flew. In that instant, Marcus shoved him back, sending the giant stumbling into a nearby pillar. The outcasts around them hesitated, their confidence wavering for a brief moment. Looks like the big guy's out of order, Marcus muttered to himself, his heart racing. He couldn't afford to let up. He had to keep them distracted long enough for Zilara to finish the job. He turned to look for her, just in time to see her land a precise blow on Varric's remaining functional arm, disabling it completely. She was fast, fluid, her attacks a testament to the deadly precision of Ekris combat. The last of the outcasts hesitated, realizing they had lost their leader. "Now, halt!" Zilara shouted. Marcus didn't need to be told twice. He fired one last shot at the remaining enemy soldiers, taking them down one by one as they fled, and rushed to Zilara's side. "Nice work," Marcus said, catching his breath. "I think we make a good team." Zilara shot him a quick, appreciative glance. "For now, but don't get used to it," Marcus smirked. "Noted." The battle was won, but as Marcus looked around at the wreckage, at the fallen soldiers and the carnage, it was clear this was only the beginning. A new chapter had been written, and for better or worse, it was one he was now a part of. The galaxy had just been reminded that humans could play the Game of Thrones too. The question was, would they be ready for the consequences? And as the dust settled, Marcus couldn't help but wonder what would come next. There was a long way to go before the galaxy would kneel, but one thing was for sure. He was in the middle of something that would change everything. The aftermath of the battle left the Ekris throne room in disarray. The once majestic halls, lined with the gleaming stones of the Ekris Dominion, now looked like the aftermath of a storm. Blaster marks scorched the walls, broken furniture lay scattered across the floor, and the smell of smoke still lingered in the air. But despite the chaos, there was a certain sense of satisfaction in the air. A victory had been won, and the outcasts had been pushed back for now. Marcus Holt, his uniform singed and his face covered in grime, leaned against the throne room's marble pillar, trying to catch his breath. His chest heaved with exhaustion, but there was a satisfied grin on his face. His adrenaline was still high. "Not bad for a day's work," he muttered to himself. "Well, you did your part," Zilara said, appearing beside him with an ease that made Marcus question whether she'd even broken a sweat during the whole ordeal. She had a few marks on her armor, but otherwise she looked as composed as ever. "The outcasts won't be back anytime soon, but their defeat won't change the larger game." "Yeah, about that," Marcus said, rubbing his jaw. "I think I missed the memo on the larger game. You know, the one where I'm supposed to be a political pawn, or something." Zilara tilted her head and studied him with a mixture of amusement and something else. Something a little more serious. "The universe doesn't give us choices, Holt. It gives us opportunities. You happen to grab one. Now you're part of the Ekris story." "Yeah," Marcus said dryly, "because nothing says hero like accidentally sparking a revolution." "You didn't accidentally do anything," Zilara replied, her tone almost playful. "You acted. That's what counts." "Right, I acted." Marcus paused for a moment, still processing everything that had happened. "So now what? Are we going to have some kind of victory banquet? Or maybe a statue in my honor?" "I'm thinking something heroic. Maybe holding a blaster, you know, classic soldier style." Zilara gave him a knowing smile. "First, you need to survive the political fallout. Then we can talk about statues." Marcus winced. "Wait, you mean the royal family doesn't just toss a medal my way and send me home?" "No, Holt," Zilara said, stepping closer, her voice now taking on a serious edge. "The Ekris don't do medals. They do alliances, they do power plays, and they do politics." "Politics." Marcus winced at the word, as if it were some kind of contagious disease. "That's exactly what I was hoping to avoid." "Too bad," she said, glancing over her shoulder at her mother, who had been quietly observing the exchange. Queen Talara had been speaking to a few of her advisors, but now her gaze settled on Marcus. Her violet eyes glowed with a cold, calculating intensity. "We need to move," Zilara said quietly, her hand resting on Marcus's arm for a moment, before she gently pushed him toward the exit. "Follow me." Marcus, who had been hoping for a quiet moment to gather his thoughts, didn't argue. The last thing he wanted was to be left alone with his own thoughts. They walked through the grand corridors of the palace, the walls lined with intricate designs of distant stars and planets, each one telling a story of the Ekris people. The weight of history pressed in on him, but it was the present, and his role in it, that filled his mind. He had no idea how he was supposed to navigate the storm of political intrigue that now surrounded him. He was just a soldier, after all. "So what's the next step in my galactic hero journey?" Marcus asked, trying to keep the mood light. Zilara gave him a half-smile. "You're not the hero of this story. You're the catalyst." "Catalyst? Sounds like the same thing to me. I'm just waiting for someone to call me sir at this point." Zilara rolled her eyes. "You're getting ahead of yourself. First, we're going to the council chambers. There's something you need to see. Marcus raised an eyebrow. You mean something else I'm about to be dragged into, don't you? Exactly. Zilara's voice carried a hint of sarcasm, but there was something else in her tone. This isn't just about saving my life anymore. This is about the Ekris Dominion and the galaxy. The council chamber was a vast, circular room, its high ceilings dotted with shimmering holographic projections of star systems and political territories. The walls were lined with high-backed chairs, each one occupied by a representative from one of the Ekris Dominion's many factions. As Marcus entered, he couldn't help but feel like an outsider, like he had wandered into a game he didn't understand, a game where every move could mean the difference between life and death. Ah, Holt, our savior, one of the council members said sarcastically as he entered the room. He was an older Ekris, with white skin and dark markings along his temples. His voice dripped with disdain, and Marcus didn't like the look in his eyes. Not a savior, Marcus said, stepping forward. Just a guy trying to make it through the day. Talara, who had been seated at the head of the table, rose to her feet. Enough, she said in a voice that commanded immediate attention. The council will hear this matter in full, without further delay. Marcus watched as the council members muttered among themselves, their voices a blend of anger and curiosity. Zilara was at his side, standing a little too close for comfort, but he didn't say anything. He had a feeling she wasn't about to let him off the hook anytime soon. Let us begin, Talara said, her eyes glinting with cold calculation. We have all seen what Holt did today. He did not act out of ambition or self-interest. He acted out of duty, and that, my dear council, is the reason we are all here. The council members exchanged uneasy glances, and Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that they were waiting for him to screw up. I did what I thought was right, Marcus said, trying to keep his voice steady. I wasn't looking for fame or glory. Of course not, said another council member, this one a woman with long silver hair and sharp, calculating eyes. But now you've made an enemy of the outcasts, and worse yet, you've thrown your weight into Ekris politics. You've turned what could have been a small rescue mission into an intergalactic incident. Well, there's a first time for everything, right? Marcus said, his tone lighter than it probably should have been. He glanced at Zilara, who was giving him that same enigmatic look she always gave him. But I'm sure we can sort this out. No need for anyone to start throwing chairs or anything. Zilara shot him a sharp look. This is not the time for jokes, Holt. I'll keep that in mind, he muttered. Queen Talara stepped forward, her presence as commanding as ever. The Ekris Empire needs unity, Holt. It needs strength. And while your actions may have disrupted the outcast plans, they've also put us in a vulnerable position. The galaxy is watching, and the lines of power are shifting. Marcus nodded slowly. So, what do you want me to do about it? Talara's violet eyes fixed on him, calculating. You will become the symbol the Ekris need, a rallying point for the fractured empire. You will stand by my daughter's side as we navigate the coming storm. Zilara's eyes narrowed. You don't get a choice, Holt. Not anymore. Marcus rubbed the back of his neck, his earlier confidence slipping away. Great. I was hoping for a vacation. The council chuckled darkly, but the weight of their gazes was undeniable. The battle was over, but the real war was just beginning.